tell you very briefly, I hate it when people talk for 45 minutes before they make any sounds. So I'll just very briefly just give you a little background on this, and then I'll play you some sounds. LinnStrument is the result of me noticing something in music, and that was that most of synthesis was being played with MIDI keyboards, as you have in front of you, and what they are primarily are a bunch of on-off switches. You press the key to turn it on, and now it can tell how quickly you turn the note on, but other than that, it doesn't really do a whole lot. And so I noticed that music was not what you'd call as expressive in terms of expressivity of acoustic instruments that had come before, like guitar or violin or cello or saxophone, wind instruments, bowed string instruments, or pluck string instruments. And I noticed around the same time, what was happening was that popular music was being entirely electronically generated except for the voice, the singer's voice. And just about the same time that happened, the entire concept of an instrumental solo disappeared from the face of popular music. So it existed in all forms before that, rock or pop or jazz or country or whatever. And then all of a sudden, starting with electronically generated pop, hip hop, and other forms of dance music or electronically generated music, there were no more solos. Now there are some exceptions here and there, but in general, the solos have just gone away. And so I noticed that it happened concurrently with people playing music with on-off switches. And so I came to the conclusion that on-off switches don't make music which is interesting enough to be a foreground voice, but it makes some very good background music, or things to be behind a singer. And then I wondered, do people not care about expression? But they seem to care about expression because these singers on these pop records today have wonderfully expressive voices, full of subtle nuances and changes in pitch and loudness and timbre. And so people do value it, but they seem to not value electronic music which is played with on-off switches as a foreground voice. They want it to be a background. So I decided it would be good to bring electronic music into the foreground again. And so what an instrument basically is a machine that allows you to get the same sort of expression that one can get on fine acoustic instruments, but for electronic sound. And I'll show you what that means in a quick demonstration here. And that is that an instrument will allow me to play it will capture 3 dimensions of my finger movement, and it will do this polyphonically. So if, for example, I've got 128 notepads, this is a smaller model, the larger one is 200 notepads. This is called LinnStrument 128. So I have now a basic synthesis sound, and who here knows about basics of analog synthesis? Okay, yeah, that's good. Well, what this sound is comprised of is merely a pulse oscillator, pulse wave oscillator, and a filter, and nothing else. No envelope generators, no LFOs, not even a VCA or equivalent in a digital system. This is coming out of Logic, by the way. So when I press on a notepad, it's raising the filter frequency. So that's pressure. Then in the x-axis, or left-right, I've got control of pitch. And then the y-axis, forward-backward, I have control of the timbre. And you may know that if you change the pulse width, the duty cycle of the pulse wave, it changes the harmonic structure. A narrow pulse width, a 50% duty cycle pulse width for more of a hollow tone. So with those 3 parameters, I've taken the most simple synthesizer sound that you can possibly make, an oscillator and a filter, and made something fairly expressive. And the other thing too is I can control those 3 dimensions completely independently. Here's pressure, your pitch, simultaneous pitch bends, and independent control of timbre in the y-axis. Now you may be asking, where are the notes on this goofy thing? I decided not to arrange the note sounds on a piano keyboard because you can't do some of the most important expressive gestures of pitch that you can do on bowed string instruments, wind instruments, guitar. So what this looks like is a big 8-string bass guitar. Each of the rows is like a string with consecutive semitones. And then the lights just tell you where the natural notes are. So here's a C in blue, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And having all the notes in a line like that allows you to slide between notes very intuitively. So on a keyboard, what you do is if you want to slide from one note to the other, you play a note with one hand and you move a funny little sideways potentiometer to bend it up to another pitch without much control or accuracy. In this case, if I want to bend from a C to a G or C to a D, I just play a C and I bend to a D. Now the different rows are like different strings, and you can tune them however you want, but the most popular tuning is in all musical fourths, like a bass guitar or like the lower 4 strings of a guitar, and that's the default tuning, like this. So playing a major scale is the same as on a bass guitar or the lower 4 strings of a guitar. Or if I start on D, I have a minor scale. Or on A. And so a C major chord is D minor chord. But the nice thing about this linear arrangement, first of all, it's at once familiar because it's like any stringed instrument, but it also provides some wonderful advantages. And if you consider that most of the pitch gestures, the expressive pitch gestures on musical instruments, from guitar to bowed string instruments to wind instruments, are bending from one note to the other, or bending up a little bit, or sliding from one note to another. To do that, it's so intuitive on this. So I can just play. But I can do things on this that you can't do on the other instrument. So for example, a violinist at best, a violin has no frets, of course, so you can slide from note to note, but at best a violinist can do what's called double stops, where you can play 2 notes in harmony. Well, I can do triple stops. So it ends up being what I consider, if I look 50 years in the future, I think this is where this will be at least one very popular note arrangement on instruments. And the idea of it is now with synthesis, the human interface is separated from the sound generator, so you can optimize the human interface for the human and the sound generator for the sound. Now, if you compare that to acoustic instruments, it's a whole different story. If I want to get a violin sound, I've got to play a tiny little instrument with a fretboard that's so small I can barely play it in tune. I can certainly not play it in tune. I have to hold it between my chin and my shoulder, and it's really a horrible user interface. But with this, if I want to play a violin, I just select a violin sound, and I play a violin. So once again, I have pressure to control the bow strength. I have pitch. And I have, in this case, bow position. So there aren't really many instrument sounds you can't do, and let me play a few of those. Here's the pedal steel guitar. Oh, I have it on the wrong setting. Sorry about that. Here's slide guitar with distortion. Here's just a clean Stratocaster sound. But I can take the frets off. If I want, I can put them back on and do it like a guitar. But I'm going to demonstrate here. It has a built-in arpeggiator, and this allows you to do things that you couldn't do with a normal arpeggiator on a MIDI keyboard, for example. Here's, I guess you heard some of those, some of these sounds if you were here before. This is one of my favorites, the blues harmonica. That, by the way, is just a frequency modulation synthesis sound, but it's going through a guitar amp simulator, so it gives that feel. But if I were to play that same sound without LinnStrument's three-dimensional control, it would sound like FM through bad distortion. So it really depends on, first of all, having that control, and then, of course, you have to develop some technique as well. Here's one that I like, and this is for drums. So what I have here is in my left hand, I have a drum beat I'm going to play in real time, and with my right hand, I'm going to play a bass part. So let's see, I have to set some things up here. Yeah. So what I've got here is, it's like a big drum pad machine with 228 pads. Here's hi-hat, here's bass, here's snare, and wait a minute, I'm going to set it. Yeah, okay. So right now it's using the built-in arpeggiator, so when I just vary the pressure on the pad, it's going to repeat the note. Now this is an old feature, an old drum machines that I first created in 1984 on a product called the Linn 9000. It's called, I used to call it note repeat, but people eventually just call it roll. So if you hold pressure down, it varies the sound of each repeated note. Now that's what you find on drum machines. But what I can do is a few more things. If I tilt my finger left and right, I change the pitch. If I want to go even farther, I go down here. And furthermore, if I tilt my finger forward, I have now a pressure-controlled filter. And that's independent for all drums. So I can make a beat with 3 fingers. Now this low row on the bottom, it's in a different color. The green and the yellow tend to blend together there, but this is actually yellow at the bottom. This is controlling the speed of the arpeggiator repeat. So if I touch it and then I move to the right one, it goes from 16th note swing to 16th triplets, 32nd notes, 32nd note triplets, and then I can change the pitches at the same time. So with 3 fingers, I can create a nice syncopated beat. And I can go into pressure-controlled filter on all the sounds by tilting forward, or back to natural sounds, or anywhere in between. So since I'm playing drums with my left hand, this one's available for bass. So you can do quite a lot with it, and I think the main idea here is that once you have these 3 dimensions control and you're freed from the constraints of the standard black and white keyboard interface, there's not much you can't do. Of course, I've practiced it a lot, and I can do the gestures very well, but no matter how good I am, I couldn't do those same gestures on a well, for example, a Rolly Seaboard, which is an excellent instrument. We're all good friends. We're all on the same mission to rid the world of on-off switches. But in the keyboard interface, it's great as a sort of a transitional technology because it's something you're familiar with. But the arrangement of the piano key notes on the Seaboard prevents you from doing some of the slides and pitch gestures that you can do so easily on this. My feeling is that piano is just wonderful, and I love great piano music. It's just that it was designed at a time when you had to have a string behind each key a few centuries ago. So it's in this age, it's not quite as relevant, and I think I would prefer to have an instrument that is designed for optimum human interface at this point in time. Anyway, any questions come to mind so far? Yes. Well, I'll yeah, there's one over there. Oh, there's one. There was almost one. Oh, that's right. Microphone.
Hello. Just wanted to ask, how much time have you actually invested into creating one of these?
Oh, well, for me, quite a long time because I've had this on the market for 2 years, and I was developing it for 4 before then. But I will say that people do take to it very easily, and for a couple of reasons. Number one is, what's your instrument, by the way?
Piano.
Okay, piano. Well, one thing you're probably aware of is that piano, and once again, it's a wonderful instrument, I'm not knocking it. But you may know that to play a major triad, it's one fingering in the key of C, it's a different fingering in the key of C sharp, a different fingering in D, different one. In other words, there are 12 different fingerings for each type of chord or each type of scale. Now, by comparison, LinnStrument, by virtue of the fact that it's like a stringed instrument, it's what they call isomorphic. And so everything is based on relative pitch, and that means that for a given chord type or scale type, like a major scale, I can use the same fingering for all keys. So for example, here's a major scale. Here's a major scale. Here's a major scale. So playing it is 12 times as easy as a piano, unless you're playing very simple music. For example, if you're doing pop songs or you're only on the white keys, it's very easy to play the notes of the major scale because they're right out in front. They put those pesky black keys in the back. But if you try to play more complex music, you find suddenly that what seemed to be so much easier to play at first now becomes far, far more complex. And that's why I have such great respect for people who can play such wonderful two-handed jazz. It's so hard to play, and there are so few people can play it so well. So on this instead, you have a surface, and by the way, I don't have the sustain pedal hooked up, but you can play it just like a piano in that sense that you have the sustain pedal. So it's much easier once you learn a chord. It's the same shape no matter what key you play it in. The other thing is that there's intelligent pitch control on it. So for example, if I play anywhere within the note, it's going to be in tune, and that's because there are software frets that are on before you play the note. But then once you play the note, once you play the note and press it down, the software frets are taken off. So you get the benefits of both. Now I play guitar mainly, or I played the guitar mainly. I'm now a LinnStrumentalist. But when I played guitar, I was always frustrated that I had frets, and so I couldn't do the sliding from note to note that a violinist or a cellist could. I could bend pitch, of course, but it wasn't quite the same. And so it seemed to me, in the age of technology, why should I be limited to either playing a fretted instrument or a fretless instrument? And so how that becomes easier in relation to your initial question is that it's so much easier to play in tune. So piano, of course, is very easy to play in tune, but you can't slide, you can't do those expressive gestures with pitch and such. Now, with this, you heard me play the violin. Well, I'm not that great a musician, and yet I was playing every note in perfect tune and doing vibratos. So what happens is you get to focus on the expressive gestures, but you don't have to focus any longer on taking 5 years to play in tune on a violin or a cello, or even on some wind instruments to get the proper embouchure that you can actually play in tune, and it always comes out at the right pitch. So people that have that, and I've sold about 1,000 of them so far, they report back that they pick it up very easily, and all of a sudden they sort of see the notes as a map where they can find what they want to play very easily. The other thing too is that if I compare this to a guitar, one advantage the piano has is if you're playing in the key of C, all those good notes are right out in front. Well, on LinnStrument, you have the lights do the same sort of thing. If I want to play the lights, if I just choose to play the lights, and I only play the lights, I will always be playing in tune. Now, as a guitar player, I wasn't that great, and so sometimes I would be working with a singer who said, "Oh, I don't know if I like that song in G. Let's do it in G flat or something like that," right? And so I was playing up on the top part of the neck, but the dots wouldn't move when I would change key. And so I found it much easier to play on this because I can always play in tune no matter where I am. And the lights guide me to the right note. So for those two reasons, I think that most instrumentalists would agree that they find it much easier to learn to play quickly, and they get to focus only on the expressive gestures and to give music the emotion, the expression that they want to give it, and not worry as much about taking years to play it in tune, things like that.
If you're a music producer, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date on the latest Pyramind tutorial videos, track breakdowns, elite sessions, and more. Visit us at pyramind.com.